So welcome to another episode of Commerce Insiders podcast by Volma. This is our last Shop Talk 2023 special. With me, I have Jasmine Enberg from Insider Intelligence. Jasmine, could you kindly introduce yourself to our listeners? What is your background and what are you currently working with?
Sure. Hi, Mikko. Hi, everyone. I am Jasmine Enberg. I'm a principal analyst at Insider Intelligence, covering all things social media. I've been pretty heavily focused on Twitter and TikTok over the past few months, as I'm sure many of you know why. But I've also been building out our coverage of the creator economy, influencer marketing, and social commerce. So those are the main topics that I'm working on currently.
Great. We are super happy to have you here. As we are recording this episode now in mid-April, slightly after Shop Talk, how did you like Shop Talk? Any thoughts?
I loved it. It was my first Shop Talk, actually. I don't know how many times you've been in the past, but I didn't have much to compare it to, and I was only there for 24 hours. I flew in from LA. So I didn't have that much time to actually walk around the shop floor, but I could feel the energy and the excitement at Shop Talk, which was really fantastic after, a couple of years of no in-person events to see that they're really coming back. I was also a part of Shop Talk's very first session on the creator economy. I presented research from my new report on the creator economy, and I moderated a panel with TikTok, Overstock.com, and UTA Ventures about the changing dynamics of the creator and the brand relationship. And it was exciting to be on stage, but it was also super exciting to see how the creator economy really has permeated, every industry at this point, and changed the way that brands connect with customers on and off social media. And I think there's a lot of learnings that established brands can take from creator-led brands, which are now starting to pop up as well.
Awesome. Love it. And that's definitely a buzzword because even Shopify's president, Harry Finkelstein, has been talking a lot about the creator economy. Moving to the next question, considering the uncertain legal status of TikTok, how do you recommend brands allocate their resources when it comes to investing in this platform?
TikTok really, from the advertising and marketing perspective, TikTok really has become a must-buy for a lot of advertisers. Not all, but many. And I think for now, because, everything is still so uncertain and there are still a lot of legal and regulatory hurdles to putting a broader ban on TikTok here in the US, brands should really stick with their current TikTok strategies. I don't suggest making major changes right now. I do think it's good to have a backup plan in place, thinking about, where audiences and customers might go should TikTok be banned, nurturing audiences on other social platforms, extending creator campaigns, and being flexible with ad buys. From the commerce perspective, TikTok Shop, which is TikTok's live streaming arm, is now in testing in the US. And there have been reports that uptake by businesses or merchants really hasn't been as strong as TikTok probably would have liked. And I think part of that hesitation probably has to do with the possibility of a broader ban on TikTok. But I sort of expected that to happen anyway. Live commerce has never really taken off here in the US, outside of a few use cases like creator-led product launches for exclusive items, for example. So I think, brands are probably less willing to invest heavily into live commerce, especially on TikTok right now, given all of the regulatory hurdles. I do think, probably the stronger path for TikTok Shop would be perhaps to get Chinese sellers who want to expand their presence in the US. In China, of course, live streaming commerce is already huge, and they're accustomed to this kind of format. But for right now, TikTok Shop does not allow foreign merchants, and I imagine that there might be a little bit of more regulatory issues heading TikTok's way, or at least a little bit more scrutiny from the government should that start to happen.
Really good. Love those comments. And from your perspective, what role does social media, especially like paid social media, play in success of these e-commerce brands? And and how has this sort of like importance shifted over the past few years? What are your sort of like notices?
Yeah, I think it varies somewhat from brand to brand, but generally speaking, social media, both from an organic and a paid perspective, has and continues to be a huge source of customer acquisition and engagement, particularly if you're thinking about smaller or D2C brands, as well as these new creator-led brands that we talked a little bit about earlier. Particularly with the launch of the latter, we're kind of seeing the economics of how you bring a product or a brand to market change. You know, creators are all about community first and building an audience first. And they're building these audiences primarily on social media, and then they're creating products that speak specifically to that community or to that audience. And I think there's a lot that established brands can learn from that approach. And then if you look at social media sort of more narrowly and, you know, what platforms are performing the best for brands, most brands right now report that Instagram is still, you know, the number one platform, both for community building, for customer acquisition. It provides the highest ROI on many of their campaigns. TikTok, of course, has community and creators kind of at the heart of its strategy and its platform, but it's still new. And its tools are maybe not as advanced as Instagram or Facebook's or, you know, some of the other established social platforms, but they are improving. And we're seeing a lot of brands have success on TikTok as well.
Good. Then, Jasmine, what about Twitter? We have seen lots of our customers abandoning the platform, at least finishing with their paid acquisition strategies there. What kind of future do you see with Twitter?
Well, they're not alone. I think for a lot of brands, especially big brands, which of course make up the majority of Twitter's advertising revenues, the risk of advertising on Twitter right now still really isn't worth the reward. At Insider Intelligence, we've actually just released a brand new forecast on Twitter's ad revenues, which, Mikko, you may have seen me post about on LinkedIn. But we're expecting its ad revenues to decline by 28% this year, which is really a historic decline for the company and for social media companies in general. And I think for, you know, a lot of companies that have advertised on Twitter, the risk assessment has really moved from the platform and thinking about sort of stability and all the chaos that ensued right after Musk took over to really, you know, questions about the person in charge. You know, I would say at this point, Elon Musk is probably the biggest problem with Twitter's ad business. It's, of course, not the only one. You know, Twitter really was never an integral part of most brands' advertising or marketing strategies. It had a lot of problems, especially when it came to direct response. And Musk hasn't really changed that. So, you know, I think there's a lot of questions that advertisers are asking. And, you know, of course, it's making the future of Twitter really uncertain. That said, I don't think Twitter is just going to disappear. A lot of brands that have stopped advertising are still using it for organic marketing, for customer service. That's probably less controversial. But in the big scheme of things, you know, Twitter is a small platform. Its cultural relevance is starting to decline. There's a lack of trust in leadership. There's questions and confusion over, you know, what's going on with the stability of the platform. And then, of course, you know, there are the issues with its ad performance that are all really holding advertisers back.
Super interesting. Let's talk about the creator economy for a while. With the rise of influencer marketing, how can brands effectively leverage this strategy while maintaining the authenticity and the trust?
It's such a great and timely question. You know, there's been so much momentum around the creator economy right now. I mean, we talked a little bit about, you know, how it had a presence at SHOPTALK. It was also at CES. I also moderated another panel, you know, at Creator Economy Live in Vegas earlier this year. So there's a lot of talk about it, and brands really want to be thinking about how to get involved. But we are in this age now of something called de-influencing, which is really, you know, is the opposite of influencing, in the sense that creators are using their platforms to tell audiences what not to buy instead of what to buy. And for a lot of brands, I think this has been, a pretty scary development, but I promise you that it's not the end of influencer marketing, and it's certainly not the end of social commerce. But because this is happening, it's a really good time for brands to really be making sure that they're working with the right creators. And I'm not just talking about creator follower count, whether they choose to work with a micro influencer or a macro influencer, but really focusing on things like relevancy and authority to make sure that they're reaching the right target audiences, and also that those audiences actually trust what these consumers have to say, or what these creators have to say, Trust is one of the biggest drivers of social commerce in particular, and brands really have to ensure that they're establishing that trust within their creator partnerships as well.
Very good. What about, how do you anticipate the uncertain future of TikTok impacting the overall social media landscape, and what steps brands or retailers should take to prepare?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, it's really not clear what is going to happen. There is, bipartisan support for a broader ban on TikTok only goes so far. But I do think that the turmoil at TikTok, as well as the turmoil at Twitter and other companies, including Meta, really has led to this reshuffling of the social media landscape. We are seeing a lot of new apps start to arise. We're seeing a lot more fragmentation. A lot of these apps are Gen Z focused. We heard about this in the TikTok hearing about how, some of the reports about the negative impact that social media has had on Gen Z is really driving them to search for spaces that they feel are safer, more welcoming, perhaps a little bit more intimate. And a lot of the apps that have bubbled up recently, whether that's, Be Real, although its interest in that seems to be waning, really speak to that. And I expect we'll see a lot more of those kinds of spaces, start to emerge. Not every single app that emerges is going to be worth brands and retailers paying attention to, but it is worth paying attention to this larger trend of what's going on within social media. Why are these apps arising right now? Why are they gaining traction? And really understanding what it is that consumers, potential customers, are looking for as part of their social media experience.
In the light of COVID pandemic, have you observed any new customer or consumer behaviors on social media that brands should be aware of and even capitalize on? What actually changed during the pandemic, if anything?
Well, first, the increased time that we spent on social media, it stuck, right? We're not seeing increases in time spent the way that we were in 2020 and perhaps even in 2021, but we're still spending way more time on social platforms than we were prior to the pandemic. It really accelerated that trend. So for all of this talk about, social media dying or being dead, I mean, that's something that's really good to point to. So that's the first thing. We're spending more time on social media than ever before. The other thing that changed was because people were cooped up at home, they got tired of seeing this pristine, perfect content on social media. We had been in this age of the Instagram influencer where everything had to be perfect. And they were producing this highly polished, almost TV-like content. And then that changed. That changed partly because of TikTok, but we've seen that now this kind of real, authentic, raw content really spread across all of the social media platforms. And it's even had this ripple effect into other media channels as well. So we're starting to see brands really incorporate more authentic, more real, more raw content into, all of their channels, even television.
Really good remarks. I love it. What about, Jasmine, how important it is to diversify social media presence across multiple platforms, and what are the potential risks of relying too heavily on a single platform?
It's super important. And I think that is one of the big lessons here from all of the changes that are happening within social media. Brands really do need to have a diverse portfolio of social platforms, and they can perform different functions or achieve different goals on these different social media platforms. Relying on one platform is never a good idea. Even before there was talk about TikTok being banned, even before there was all this turmoil at Twitter, because there's so many external factors that really can impact how brands connect with those consumers. For TikTok, specifically, I think, because it is so new, there are brands that perhaps rely too heavily on it. I don't think it's most brands' primary or first platform, so they already have established presences elsewhere. So really just making sure that, brands are diversified across different platforms, and integrating, campaigns across those platforms is really vital.
Cool. My last question for today, Jasmine. As we continue to face uncertainties in the social media landscape, what advice do you have for e-commerce operators in developing a resilient and future-proof social media strategy?
So I said social media isn't dying, but social commerce, or maybe I also said social commerce isn't dying, but I'll repeat that. Social commerce isn't dying either. It's here to stay. But, during the pandemic as well, we saw particularly Meta start to incorporate more lower funnel shopping capabilities into Instagram, also into Facebook, but mainly into Instagram. And now they're backtracking on some of those moves. So when you're thinking about social commerce, I think brands should primarily be using it as a way to direct customers to their own sites and platforms to really complete those purchases. So that could mean, a strategy that includes commerce ads, shoppable creator content, shoppable organic content, all with the purpose of not necessarily driving that transaction immediately on that platform, but somewhere else later on. That helps them, achieve a couple of things. There's more control over the customer experience. I've seen a lot of reports about brands that have used, in-house tools from Instagram in particular, being frustrated by the fact that if something goes wrong, they don't have control over that customer service, and they don't necessarily have control over shipping and delivery. And you'll probably like this, Mikko, it gives them more control over customer data. And I think that that's incredibly important for brands right now in their commerce strategies on social.
Fully agreed there. Thank you, Jasmine, for all of your effort, wonderful insights on social media. And this was actually our last Shop Talk 2023 episode. Jasmine, where can our listeners reach you if they want to hear more about you and your thoughts?
Yes, so on Insider Intelligence's platforms, that's www.insiderintelligence.com.
Lovely. Thank you for your time. Tune in for a next episode of Commerce Insight podcast again next Monday. Thank you.